Boom. We're live.
Boom. Great. So stoked, Taylor, to have this conversation with you about leadership and particularly servant leadership, mostly because I think you embody servant leadership in a way that I really admire, and it inspires me just to get better at it every day. And I see you showing up. And we wanted to get on here and talk because you sent me an article about Herb, what's his last name?
Kelleher?
Herb Kelleher, yeah, of Southwest Airlines and his servant leadership and how much he just cared about everyone that he worked with. And that was the most important thing to him. And it reminded me so much of you. I was like, dude, this is you. It was such a great article. So we're going to share the article in the link or below in the comments, but also wanted to open up a real conversation about the challenges of being a leader and running organizations, both as first-time CEOs, and what we're learning and how we're striving to be ourselves and be authentic and also create results and have an impact and really change people's lives. And so I'm curious just to hear a little bit about your journey in that and what some of your challenges have been in just being you, you know, and really showing up as a servant leader.
Yeah, it's funny. So I found that article because I was flying Southwest, and I was reading it, and I was like, man, this guy Herb is such a badass because he embodies this idea of servant leadership. And I was like, man, I want to be like that. So it never occurred to me that, and I certainly didn't share it with you because I thought I was like him. My personality is so different from his. And in a way, like, what spoke to me about it was I was like, oh man, like I want to be so much better. And in some sense, it also made me insecure about my leadership, you know? I think that, so it resonated, but it also kind of scared me a little, like, oh man, like, and just for some context, like the whole article is about how incredibly loving this guy was his whole career. And like, even the use of the word love is like really important because he was so unafraid to literally use the word love all over the place. And I didn't even know this until reading the article that Love Field in Dallas, he deliberately named it that, not because it's not like named after somebody whose name is Love. He just wanted it to be called Love Field. And their stock ticker is LUV, just because he's like into it. He just, from like, the tip of his hair down through his toes, he's just all about it, and it's real. And some of the conversation I've been having in my head by myself about this is like, I feel like I have a lot of love that I want to give, and I also want to get more love than I'm getting. And it's like kind of scary to do that anywhere, but definitely at work. And like, work is so important to me. And I've sort of been like fantasizing about and envisioning building a company that's like just profoundly supportive and loving of the team, and simultaneously like also scared of how that looks, and like stepping into these kind of behaviors that frankly I have never seen modeled personally.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of why this article was so resonant. I was like, wow, somebody did this in a huge company. Like, it's not even, it's not an original idea. So yeah, that's kind of the conversation that I've been having. I'm curious, like, what about it like struck a chord for you?
It was the loving piece. The image that really is seared in my mind is when they created the tagline for Southwest, "You are now free to move about the country." And there was another company that had that tagline, and they threatened to sue Southwest. And Herb instead was like, you know what, guys? Why don't we just have a good old-fashioned arm wrestling contest about it? And like turned it into this huge PR stunt. He like made this huge joke out of it, was like, like training with his team and getting everyone stoked, got the other company involved. They rented out a huge stadium. He like shows up with like a cigarette dangling out of his mouth and just makes this huge thing out of it, ends up getting both companies a ton of PR. And the other company ended up giving the slogan to them afterwards and was like, it's all good. And it was just this, and he used it as a way to like really connect with his team and just create a really like fun environment. And, that was like grandiose, but it was how he just related to each person. And he was like, we hire for attitude, not for skill. You can always train someone, but if their attitude is there, that's the most important thing. And what, that really resonated with me. And when you were talking, what came up for me too was, I have this sense of how things can be in a culture and an organization where we can be really caring and supportive to each other on our own personal journeys too. Like I want to help people I work with through like navigating difficult things in their personal lives. And I want us to like really bring our full selves to work. And I don't see that really being modeled anywhere. And it's hard because I've had this conversation before. People are like, yo, go, like, why aren't you reading books about being a CEO, or like, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, I just feel like the answers lie in different places, and I haven't really seen it modeled in a way where it's like a lot of stuff I read about being a CEO is like great, but I think there's a different kind of leadership that's possible, and that's why the article resonated so much for me. It was like, and it's scary because like I do want to show up and I do want to create a culture, in our company and then team that I'm working, with, that is like vulnerable and real. And I don't know if there's even really a place for that in business, or if that's like the smartest thing to do. But I just know it's like, guys, we're here on earth, and like to connect and support each other and build something together, we should do it with open hearts. Like, it just seems like that's the right way to do it. So I think part of this conversation is like, I don't really know. And so it's, that's part of the journey, is it's like just trying to figure it out. But I know like little things we do, for example, like every team call, we like check in on how we're feeling, and just so what's going on in someone else's, like their life. Their aunt just died, or maybe they just had like something great happen in their relationship or something else, that there are just the little moments of connection. But I'm like, I don't know, I'm curious for you, just as a leader too, how you, like, what other things you saw in Herb that you wanted to apply to your company or to the people that you serve.
Well, I think one of the most important parts about this conversation, specifically about Herb, especially Herb, not Herb. Like, I read an article like that, and like the insecure part of me is like, well, my personality is so different from him. Like, I don't have the bombastic thing that he has, or like, it talks about his encyclopedic memory of like every single employee's name, like, and their dog's name and their dog's birthday, like crazy. I was like, well, I can never be like that. And so I can easily go down this sort of route of like, well, fuck. And the real conversation is like, that's not important. What's important is that this guy is giving all his love, period. And so that's, as it's sort of like the dust settled a little bit after reading the article, that's what I'm really trying to take away from it, is like the fearless expression of that love in a work environment. And that's, I say fearless because it is scary. And I would bet, I don't think this is some like hippy dippy, whatever. Like, I think literally everybody probably on the planet wants more love, and probably has more love to give than they're currently able to give. And yeah, like you said, like there's like a zillion CEO books about how to be a leader, but yeah, I don't think it's that simple. I think a lot of it's like developing the fortitude, confidence, skillfulness to give your love in a way that is authentic, and like somehow navigating this conversation about what's appropriate at work. And I'm glad you brought up this thing about how you guys run meetings and you check in by asking how you're feeling. We actually we started doing that 2 months ago, and I was so scared. I was so scared to do it. And a lot of times when you introduce that, people will answer it by being like, feeling good. And then they'll like say something sort of circumstantial, like, I had a good like meeting this morning or something
Right.
very superficial. And I'm not judging that, but the purpose of it is to actually create a safe space. Like, it's safe here. It's cool to show up and share how you're really feeling. So yeah, I guess the bottom line for me is like, number one, just practicing being fully loving and not holding it back, and knowing that there isn't really a roadmap. Like, this is just me, like what's genuine for me. And
Yeah.
then just like learning different ways to concretely map that into a work environment. So I know we got to wrap up in about 20 seconds, but if there's one ask that I have, if people are watching, it's like, have you experienced something that made you feel like really safe, really supported, really loved in a work environment? That would be super cool to hear about.
Yeah. And what that was like for you. Yeah. And we'll drop the article below.
Amen.
Awesome, Taylor. Love jamming with you, brother.
I love you, and I want your
I
love.
love you too. Yes.
That's
I
my
want your love as well.
All right. See you.
Bye.